Johnny Bartolomeo.
My man, 50 grand.
Yo, I gotta, Moose, just to put this in perspective, okay? How old are you?
24.
24. You're going to be 25. Johnny,
Awesome.
how long did you spend behind bars?
I was in jail for 27 years. You were -3, Moose.
Moose, he was in jail longer than you've been alive.
Listen, I have kids, right, in jail that I would be with. Like, just for example, I'd be like in the laundry room, like a new guy would come in, a new kid. Like, I always treated the kids with respect, right? You know what I'm saying? Because that's how you get respect. You be respectful, right? Not like walk around like a hard guy. Like, that's all kind of bullshit in jail too, right? And I would be like, hey, my man, what's up? Hey, what's up? Where you from? Talk to him like, hey, how old are you? And he goes, oh, I'm 26. I was like, wow. You were like 1 year old when I came to prison. They were like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, you put those things in perspective and picture that like as a guy in prison for that long, right?
Yeah.
Being like, man, like, you know what I'm saying? So it just kind of put everything in perspective. So it's kind of, it's wild, definitely wild.
Nuts, yeah.
We got to get your whole story. But it's funny because the first thing I asked him, we had him in the other day for the show, and I'm like, what the hell? He went in 96, came out 18 months ago. You must have been like, when you saw your first cell phone, you must have been like, are you kidding me right now? Because in 96, it was the computers with the fat backs. They didn't even have flat screen TVs. Maybe were cell phones were like rare at that time.
I'll put it in perspective for you because I see it like through fresher eyes, right? You see it through like trying to look back. I know vividly what we had, right? If you remember the Gordon Gekko phone in the movie Greed, he was like, greed is good or whatever. Wall Street. When he said greed is good, that I had just got rid of that one, and what had come out was the Motorola with the plastic antenna and the flip, the gray phone. That was the last phone that I had before I went to prison. And for like laptops, I remember this guy from San Fernando Valley came to visit one of my friends, and he had a laptop, and I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, it's a laptop. You use the internet. I'm like, what? Like, and I was like, look at this guy. He's nuts, right? Mm-hmm. But that was the last thing I had ever seen when it came to technology. But fast forward when you said, like, when you first seen a cell phone, I had seen them in prison, right? Because there is contraband in prison.
Yeah.
So, the people do the best they can to keep it out of prisons, but it gets in. Those, like, cell phones are, like, ubiquitous, right? They're everywhere in society. So you would tend to think that they're also in the microcosm, which is prison. Mm-hmm. So I had seen them, and I had used them a few times, you know what I'm saying? Briefly. But, when you have one of these in your hand in jail, it's like having a time bomb. You can get more time in prison. You can go to the hole. They'll take all your privileges, take all your property, so you never want to get caught with them. So whenever you have one in your hand, you're like, so you can never really get acclimated with it. So when I really did have a chance to sit down and get acclimated with it, it was just, I love technology. We had talked briefly about, the great things about technology, the bad things, but I just try to stay focused on the positive with it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back before you even went to jail. How did you, I know you told me before you had good parents growing up and all that stuff. So where you grew up in East Boston?
Grew up in East Boston my whole life. I'm an East Boston kid through and through.
Yep. And your parents, what did they do for work?
So my mother was an administrator for a neighborhood health center. My father was a machinist his whole life. He was a maintenance machinist. He was worked on the lathes, worked on the computers. So he was very, very talented. He was always in demand. Yeah. He worked in, like, I don't know if you remember Norelco on the Linway for the longest time, North American Phillips. It was a huge, huge building there, but he used to be a maintenance machinist. He was a troubleshooter. And he used to say, like, for like months at a time, all he would do is just sit there and read books. Yeah. But when the machine broke down, he'd be there for a week at a time sometimes until they got that stuff up and running. But so, yeah, my parents were, taught me a very strong work ethic and a very strong religious ethic. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But, like my father always says, a man does manly things, right? So when you kind of break away from your family's example and what they had taught you, so I did that. I kind of broke away from, all the teachings that I had as a kid, so.
Did you have siblings?
So I got two older brothers. My middle brother, Ronnie, died in 1993, and my oldest brother, Charlie, is an accountant in Saugus, Massachusetts. His office is right next door to mine, where I sell my clothing.
Yeah. So, and at what point did you kind of start straying from your parents' rules and stuff, and the streets got you, huh? Is that what it was? Was it friends or?
So I like to think that I I mean, adolescence is a real impressionable time, right?
Yeah.
So you look around you and see things, and I had talked about this last time when I was on the show. Like, you become conscious of who you are, and you kind of think in that moment who you want to be. And I always use the example of, this is my neighborhood, this is the way it always was, this is the way it's always going to be, this is who I am, so everybody tries to, like, inner city kid, like, we can both kind of agree with it right here, right now. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to, show weakness, right, to anybody. You always want to perpetrate, like, being like a tough guy, whatever the case.
I mean, we all basically grew up within miles of each other because Moose, you're Rivera. I grew up in Everett, and you grew up in East Boston.
Right there. You know what I'm saying? So it's not very, very different. So I just always wanted to be, like, considered like a tough guy. You know what I'm saying? So I always, it was almost that fraudulent thing, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I said, like, I proved it to everybody else, but never to myself. And I always felt like there was a void there when we talked last week, a few days ago about it. But, I started to, I didn't really like school.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was kind of fearful of learning because I didn't think I could do it, and everybody, my father and my mother wanted me to go to college. They would pay for it, whatever. But I just started selling dime bags of pot. That's how I started, and I remember I took a pinch, and my friends came down that I was selling for, and, I didn't give nobody's name. I just, took the pinch, whatever, and they bailed me out, and they were like, hey, man, I appreciate it. I was like, yeah, whatever, I ain't going to do that. And that's kind of started how I started, like, kind of building that reputation. I got into fights in my neighborhood, and, probably a couple of lucky fights that I got into that I won, you know what I'm saying? That, people had drove by at certain moments of time, and, I started to get this kind of a reputation, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I always say that, we kind of, perpetrate what people believe about us.
Yeah.
So when people started to believe that I was a tough guy, I started to, like, run right in that mold and say, you know what, I'm going to show you that I really am, and that's kind of how that started in my neighborhood. I started selling, like, drugs, and then, I started to get to know some people that were in the, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club.
Yeah.
And my Uncle Bobby ran the Palace for the longest time.
No shit.
You're showing your age, Ramiro.
Dude,
You're showing your age.
I used to
kid.
live at the Palace. I used to do appearances there all the time.
So Bobby Bartolomeo.
Okay.
Was
Why does that name sound familiar?
He's the head of security, right?
Okay.
He was Russell Robard's guy, Chris Scott.
Yeah, Russell, yeah.
Right? That, he used to work security for them. He always had a permit to carry.
Yeah.
But, and how big that complex was. It had, like,
massive.
Yeah, it was huge. It had, like, 20 clubs. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was, I think, 9 or 11 clubs under one roof. And once you went in, you can go from, and all the clubs were all different. Like, you had the hip hop club.
Where was
like
it?
In Saugus.
Right where the Lowe's is, in right next to the Malden Saugus line, right there.
Like, you're going up Route 99 right before you get on Route 1.
Yeah.
Right there, it's
that
the Lowe's.
Lowe's is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that used to be.
where there's the Lowe's and the LA Fitness.
The
Yes.
gym right there.
Yep,
That's
yep.
where it
So
was.
that was the
That was
Palace.
it. That was called the
Huge.
Palace Nightclub Club Complex.
You had a hip hop club, like
Country.
the
There
dance
was
club,
country music.
But, like, once you
Beach
get in,
club.
you could go to any club you want. Like, you could go from one to another or whatever. It was.
What happened?
Well, listen, it was great for a long time.
It was
listen,
great for-
it didn't
yeah.
go out of business because there was lack of people that
Right.
wanted to go.
I used to do appearances there all the time, and it got to the point where I knew my way. I would go into the basement,
Right.
and you could pop in the basement and pop out in different parts of the club.
Right.
So it would be like I'd be like going into like you see in the movies when somebody like enters like the
Like
portal,
Goodfellas,
and
right.
they pop out another portal. People be like, yo, how'd you get over here? I'm like, I know my way around. But yeah, that place was crazy.
So getting back to that, right? So my Uncle Bobby ran that club, right? And everybody knows, that he did. And guys in the club, when I say the club, Hell's Angels, used to have their parties there. Like, they have a Valentine's Day party, just fundraisers and stuff, to raise money, for guys in jail, whatever, just to derive capital and, put on a good time, whatever the case may be is. So I started to get to know guys through there, right? So everybody knew my uncle, and I was my uncle's nephew, obviously. So, that just, I am who I say I am. They know who I am. People know who you are. You know what I'm saying? So that gave me the opportunity to be around those guys. And, what happened was I ended up, just kind of hanging out and doing my thing and becoming one of the guys, So, and what that did was that kind of cemented, my reputation or name as, like, trying to be a tough guy, right? You know what I'm saying? So I always kind of looked up to those guys and wanted to be around them because I had grew up in East Boston, right? Like, which is you would think is like, oh, it's like the mob area, mob territory, right? And and I knew guys in like organized crime and stuff like that at that time, of course, you know what I'm saying? But there was people in like East Boston itself that weren't involved in any of that stuff, but always kind of like tried to like look like they were, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you call them like plastic gangsters, right? So I was kind of turned off by that. And that's, everybody always asks like, why did you go into a motorcycle club instead of like organized crime if you were like into that, genre of things, I guess, you know what I'm saying? So, but, I just, opportunity, right? So I just kind of knew people, I guess, it's like we're all in our socioeconomic group and our demographic and our geographical area. All these kind of factors kind of played in why I kind of got into the club. So, and I did get into the club and, it led me to a 35-year prison sentence. And not that, the club did that. I did everything on my own volition. You know what I'm saying? And when I talk about the club, it's a larger entity than myself, right? So, and I have nothing bad to say about, the club or guys in the club. I never missed a commissary. I never missed an opportunity for education. My parents never missed a birthday while I was in prison. People in my family never missed anything, you know what I'm saying? Guys in the club were always there, supporting me while I was in prison. So I could never say anything bad about the club. And I told you about this interview I had on Vice TV. There was like 6 producers, were interviewing me, and they wanted me to give them something that, so they said, tell us something that nobody knows about the Hells Angels. And I told them that, well, they paid for my education.
Right.
And they made me the man who I am
They
today.
wanted like the gotcha question.
Right. And, the thing is they never called me back after that. But so, that's it. I'm saying I have nothing bad to say about anybody in the club. I'm saying, guys, I'm indebted to them. They took care of me.
How did you, to become an official member, do you have to do anything in particular, or like, do you have to get jumped in?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those things, I mean, I don't talk about personally, but I will say that, the media tries to, make this glorification of violence and stuff like that. And for me, I was just a regular guy that, people knew, you know what I'm saying? I mean, familiarity is, the number one thing is if we're hanging out together, what we don't want, even as just 3 guys hanging out, right, is somebody to come in that we don't know and are going to try to get us in trouble because they think we're doing something, right? So I think that's really, the brass tacks of it that I could talk to you about right now. But I really don't talk about things about the club. I talk about my own story because, like I say, the club is a larger entity than me, and I'm just a member of the club, right? And now I say that I'm farther away from the club than I am closer to it because, I'm just, exploring other avenues in my life right now. So.
Yeah. Were you riding a motorcycle and everything too when you were part of the club?
Of course I had a bike. Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Yeah. So now, how long did this go? Was this going on before you ended up getting arrested?
Oh, I wasn't in the club long. It was like, I got the meteoric rise and a hard crash. Because what happens is when you get involved in an organization, right? I mean, when you put a patch on your back, it's a bullseye. It's like, say, okay, this is the new target. I mean, you're advertising it, right? You might as well just walk around with, ounces of cocaine around your neck. I'm saying, because I had sold drugs as a kid in East Boston. I used to, sell pills, and I had a great business that I just flourished. You know what I'm saying? But once I got into the club, that all crashed down. You know what I'm saying? Because I was the type of kid that I wanted to do something in the middle of the street, and I wanted you to see me. Like, I wanted you to see me carrying a gun, just all bravado stuff, right? Really that, in hindsight, really makes no sense, right? To me now. And when I look back at it, like, when I was sitting in a jail cell for like the first couple of weeks, I remember playing this question over and over in my head saying, how did you think this was going to end? Wait a minute. Did you think like this, you were just going to have this life that...
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what were you seeing? Because a lot of people, that I know that have gone to prison and stuff like that, they, from an early age, I remember we'd be teenagers or whatever, and they're like, dude, I'll probably be dead by the time I'm 30. If not, I'll be in jail. They would all say that. And I was like, what are you, crazy? Because that's all they saw. That's the way they saw their life going. So what were you thinking when you were part of the Hells Angels?
Well, really just, in my whole, my whole childhood. I'm just saying, like, short-sightedness, right?
Yeah.
Youth, right? We just talked about what the greatest gift of in the whole world is that God gave to people. We were talking about Moose over here is youth, right?
Right.
But at the same time, your mind isn't developed enough to say, like, hey, wait a minute, let's be... caution, I knew nothing about caution.
Yeah.
Like, even now when I'm driving in my car, even on a motorcycle, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I had none of that. Like,
Right.
it was just, I don't even need brakes. I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, but I can't envision my way of thinking back then. It's just so hard to fathom that I thought like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, how old were you when you got arrested?
I was 26 going on 27.
26 going on 27. And what was it that happened? Can you talk about that?
Sure, I definitely can talk about my crimes. I mean, those are crimes that I'm culpable of myself, you know, that I pled guilty to, that I signed an agreement, you know, of course, without cooperating, of course. I've never cooperated with the federal government, with any authorities, nor would I ever, right? I'm saying that's basically what my reputation is premised on today, right? That's why I got the welcome that I got, you know what I'm saying? That's why everybody says, don't you hate the rats? I'm like, no, I don't hate the rats. I feel bad for them that didn't get this treatment. You know what I mean? So what I did was my case was for drugs, for methamphetamine and cocaine. That's what I got indicted for originally. Me and 16 other people. And
Also, it was like a big bust.
yeah, it was a big bust. And what happened was, I mean, for you know, and we'll get into that and stuff. But now I also got superseded. In other words, a superseding indictment means that while you're waiting, so they could arrest me for saying, okay, like, yeah, you committed fraud on a bank. Now they can arrest me, hold me. But while they're holding me, and the reason why they are holding me is because they're working on something much bigger.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? So they just kind of got us all off the streets, and then they worked on this murder indictment. Because to be honest with you, right? So I did. I never got indicted for murder, and I'll explain to you why I never got indicted for murder. But the biggest thing that happened is during this drug conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
I ended up, you know, killing a guy. You know what I'm saying? And I end up having acts of violence right in the middle of all this. So picture you, right, as a, you know, say a radio host, right?
Yeah.
And like the biggest, Tom Brady walks in one day and say, hey, the guy Ramiro's here. I want to do an interview with you. Like your biggest interview of your life just walked into your lap. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
But I just put all this stuff right on their lap. As they were investigating us, I gave them a murder and an attempted murder. And I said, hey, why don't you just take this today? Here, go to the White House and have dinner with the president.
Yeah,
that's what happened to our agent.
And what was it that, why did the murder happen?
Okay, so what happened was there was supposedly like a rival club that was in another part of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And on one of these days that they were having this little get-together, you know, I went down there and... you know, I ran a guy over that was on a motorcycle, and that's how that happened, yeah. So, I mean, that's the brass tacks of it.
While you're getting investigated for the drugs.
Right as I'm getting investigated for the drugs, you know, seeing other guys and chasing them down, hit them over the head with a hammer. I'm saying, to me, it's almost like, it's like another person did that, and I'm looking back on another person doing it, right? So, and there's been events that transpired in my life that have made me, you know, like contrite, and to look at these things and say, like, you know, wow, this is kind of a wild thing, right?
Yeah.
So... But there's one thing that happened is my brother Ronnie died. He was 39 years old, right? And it really hurt my mother bad, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, when a parent loses a kid.
That's not supposed to happen. It's unnatural.
Right. And I'm not a parent, so I can't speak firsthand about it, but I just know how that, you know, she reacted and the effect that it had on her. And I was left to think about, you know, and it was so hard on me. It was like the most depressed I ever was in prison. I wasn't able to go to the wake, wasn't able to go to the funeral, wasn't able to be with my family. But I remember getting a call one morning. I was outside and I just got off the phone with my father. I was getting the lines for a gambling ticket. I used to run a gambling ticket in prison, right? And some habits die hard, right? So, but you know, this is full disclosure. Anyway, the counselor called my name over the loudspeaker, you know, come to the office. And my friend ran to me and said, hey, the counselor wants you to make a phone call. And it's like, you need an act of Congress for the counselor to let you make a phone call.
Yeah,
you can make a phone call on the pay phone and pay for your own, whatever.
Yeah.
But so I knew it was bad. But I just talked to my father 5 minutes ago. I just got the lines from him. So I'm thinking, my mother's dead. I was like, oh my, and something really bad happened because they don't call you for telephone calls. So I went in, and I remember, getting on the phone, and my father telling me, hey, I got real bad news for you. Your brother just passed away. Your brother just died. And I remember just coming to, in the counselor having a tissue. I was crying my eyes out, and I was just saying, no. I just blanked out. From that point on, so for that, for a while, for maybe a month or two, I was just a deep depression over it. It was just the worst. It was the worst thing. So all that time when I thought I was a hard guy doing all this, things started to transpire in my life, looking at this long prison sentence, saying to myself, man, this is I don't want to do this no more. You know what I'm saying? This can't be happening. So I kind of juxtaposed, right? I had a time in my life to put those feelings side by side with the way that my mother was feeling, how I reacted when my brother died, to saying, hey, I inflicted these feelings on other people. You know what I mean? So it gave me, perspective,
right?
And it made me contrite about, that it wasn't a badge of honor anymore to me.
Yeah. So he died suddenly, or was he sick?
My brother had a heart attack. He struggled with drug addiction.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, though, because I used to do stuff with, in Chelsea, there's an organization called Roca, and they go out and, well, now I think it's a little different. Now they just work with felons, I think, that were in prison. But when I was part of it, they would go out and recruit, find gang members, find the worst of the worst to bring them in, try and help them out.
Right.
If a kid came and was, just oh, I want to get off the streets, kind of like a YMCA or whatever, they'd be like, no, go to the YMCA, go to this. They wanted the kids that didn't want help.
Right. Wow.
So but one of the big, and it was crazy. It was they would turn their life around, and they would do data on everybody, so they knew at exactly what point they would relapse and all that stuff. And they also would have a moment. They said usually about, I'm gonna mess up the number. It was maybe 18 months or 2 years in, where they would have
second thoughts, maybe.
Basically, like a guilt,
right,
of what you were saying,
yep,
where all of a sudden their life is going good, or they're fixing their lives, I should say, and they start realizing, damn, I really I messed somebody else's life up bad, because a lot of these kids, again, they were the worst of the worst.
Right.
They might not have killed someone, but they've definitely messed up other people's lives. And where they started being guilty because of that, and then because of that, all of a sudden they didn't want to do the program anymore.
Right.
But Roca had it all figured out, and they knew how to bring everybody back, and they've changed. It's an incredible organization. But it's exactly what you're saying, that whole thing where you start going damn, you feel like you don't deserve good happening in your life because you inflicted bad in somebody else's life.
You inflicted trauma on other people, and I can identify with that. At the same time, right? So I'm a guy that doesn't work on hypotheticals. I told you this last time, right? So I am very proud of who I am. I'm very happy. I wouldn't want to be anybody else but myself. If I had to do the 27 years, I've had to do all the time in prison. I just had to do and go through what I went through and figure out what I figured out to be where I am today. And I think it's an incredible, incredible journey. But I think everybody has their own journey. Nobody's journey is alike. Everybody's journey is different.
Yep.
And I believe that wholeheartedly. But I believe that, everything happens for a reason, and I can't explain anybody else's life, but I can just explain my own life. And I always use this, and I know you can understand it, that we can only live life moving forward, but only understand it in reverse.
Right.
So I think that, that's a gem, right? But it doesn't matter how much of a gem that is to say, wow, that's a great saying, but doesn't matter because you can't understand it moving forward. You can only understand it in retrospect. So you have to live it, right? So I lived a pretty exciting life, right? And I lived a pretty violent life. And now I just think that, I'm always trying to give back. And, listen, I'm not the guy that cooperated with the government. I'm not the guy that, is, saying, I wish things never happened. Listen, things happened in my life. I don't like some of them that happened, but I did them. I stand by them. You know what I'm saying? I stand by everything I've ever done in my life. If I could go back and change things, would I? I don't work on hypotheticals, so we can't even venture into that.
Right.
But, I like where I am today. I like that I'm here today, speaking about whatever I'm speaking about. And I think I'm well within the parameters of what I should be speaking about. Yeah. And this is just my life. This is just my story.
Yeah. So you didn't, on the day that, you got sentenced to the 35 years, it wasn't like a trial, you're guilty, right? It was more you, well, what was it? Because I know you didn't snitch. And you told me before that you kind of did this big speech
Yeah.
that at the time seemed like the right thing to do, but in retrospect, you're like, probably didn't help me.
Right, and I don't think it was the wrong thing to do, but it didn't help me. So, I guess if in hindsight, because I knew I could have got play, I would have maybe said things I would have been, listen, I worked on my vocabulary, I worked on my communication skills. I'm sure I would have been a little different, but it's right at the time that I did it was what I needed to do at that time because I did it. It's done.
So they were going to, you were going to go. Okay, you pled out. So you
pled out. So what happened was I got a 3-page memorandum from the government that said about a laundry list of people. If you go to trial, and if you try to fight this guy's going to get indicted for this. This guy's going to have to come back and testify in a grand jury. And if he doesn't, we're going to give him an order of immunity. And if he still doesn't testify, we're going to stop his prison time for the length of the grand jury. This guy is going to, is going to get indicted for this. This guy.
So a lot of people are going down.
And a lot of people are going down.
Just if you go to trial.
Just if I even decide to go to trial.
Oh,
so
okay.
And they said, there's that you got a 420-month sentence is on the table, and then my lawyer went and said, well, what is there anything better we can do? No, this is the best we can do because we're giving this guy an opportunity to end all his And they said the biggest thing that they said was we're not going to put you on trial for murder. So that's how that happened, and I'll explain that right now. So guys come up and they said, listen, if you need money for a lawyer, we'll tell the whole world that we need money and everybody will donate and we'll get you a lawyer.
Is the Hells Angels.
Anybody that was my friends, that was in the club, anybody said, we'll tell everybody we need money and we'll get it and we'll support you in whatever you need. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sign the plea tomorrow because everybody would no money. It'll be easy. Yeah. It'll be one person, and then I'll just go bang it out. I didn't even know what I was doing. I couldn't even, it's almost unfathomable, right? I mean, it's almost like you can't wrap your head around it until you start doing it. And then certain events happen in your life, and you're like, this is what I signed up for? So I ended up signing the plea agreement.
Okay.
It's almost untenable. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I signed the plea agreement, and what happens in court, the judge said he wanted me to admit to the facts. They were going to sign a plea for 420 months. It was 35 years. It was set in stone. Yeah. And I just went in there and, signed the plea agreement, said, I was guilty. I did it, and then I also talked about, the acts of violence. That was me too. Yeah. But I was never indicted, right? But I got an upward departure. See, so beyond a reasonable doubt, right?
Yeah.
You need that to find somebody guilty in a jury trial.
Right.
Okay, so we go from there. I pled out, right? So they don't need a reasonable doubt, right? I already pled out. I already admitted. Now,
which automatically means jail time.
Yeah, I'm jail time. Well, whatever it says in the plea agreement.
Okay,
I signed it.
Yeah,
whatever it says. If it says we're gonna hang you and I signed it, then I'm gonna hang.
Did you read it or were you?
Of course I did. I read it with a fine-tooth comb, and I took a couple things out so I could challenge my conviction later.
Yeah, which
they said I couldn't, but I added a clause where I could.
Yeah.
So of course I went over it. Now, but what also is another standard that the justice system and the federal system can use is it's called a preponderance of the evidence. It's a lower standard than beyond a reasonable doubt, obviously. It's where a judge on his own volition can make a determination saying that the jury found you not guilty, but I believe you did it. Can you imagine that? And he can do that. Or in my case where he said, you've already admitted to sufficient facts. We didn't indict you for this crime, but I believe you committed it, so we're giving you such and such a sentence. Yes. But I already knew that it was 27 years for the drugs.
Yeah.
So he gave me what, an 8-year upward departure for the murder and the attempted murder. So it wasn't really that bad of a thing where I could have fought the drug charges and went to state court on the murder. Just, it was a whole convoluted.
Yeah.
It was easier for me to plead out and easier for everybody else. You know, and I basically took one for the team.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say. So once you pled out, all those guys that they said they could have
Nothing.
connected,
Everybody
nothing.
just went and did their time and never got indicted. Because I signed on a dotted line. I
that
signed
explains why
because
everyone's
they
so
gave
nice
me
to
their
you.
word that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I gave them my word that I wouldn't. And
Yeah.
part of the sticking point was they're saying, if we're going to do this much and not get anybody in trouble, and you're going to do that much and say you're going to jail for just 35 years, not life, you got to sign that you're not going to be able to challenge your conviction. And I said, I'm not going to do that, Pot. Let's negotiate. At least, I'm already saying, yes, I did it.
Yeah.
So at least let me challenge it.
Right.
So, and they did. So I ended up
So you
being
got
able
sentenced.
to challenge it.
You got sentenced to the 27 years.
Yeah.
And,
I got sentenced to 35
I'm sorry,
years.
35 years.
Yeah.
And at what point could you start challenging your conviction? Could you do it immediately? Oh, you can do it immediately.
Immediately, but I'm saying it's almost impossible to say. It's like, you know, I did it, I'm guilty, and then saying to an appeals court judge, hey, but now this is wrong as a matter of law, as a matter of interpretation. You know what I'm saying? So I've already admitted to everything. So it's a very high hurdle to climb.
Yeah.
And that's why, of course, they allowed me to do it. But I did. What happened was I was hoping that there'd be a change in law somewhere, and there was. So when they said it's something called a predicate act, like I had 2 assault and batteries beforehand, and that brought me up to career offender with just 2 assault and batteries. So what happened is Massachusetts and really the country, but especially Massachusetts, changed their laws with their interpretation of what was a felony. So 2 of mine got knocked off. I didn't have any felonies anymore, so therefore I couldn't be a career offender. So I challenged it. I won.
Yeah.
But in the decision, the judge said, you're no longer a career offender. However, it doesn't affect the length of your sentence. So that's kind of how they got me in the end, where, you know, and she could have interpreted it that way. Just so she could have. Yeah. It's not like she's dead wrong, but she could have helped me if she wanted to. Judge Raya Zobel. I had Judge Young. And, you know, like I say, these judges, I mean, when I got into prison and I started to read and I started to educate myself, these are some of the smartest people on the planet, right?
Right.
When you read their decisions and you read just the vernacular, the way they talk, you know, it's otherworldly, like, you know what I'm saying? They're smart people. So this not an indictment. This isn't an indictment against the judges. You know, if you mess with my friends, I'm not going to let you do something. Like if you say, hey, listen, I said, who's that guy? Yeah, you can't park there. Beat it. That's my friend spot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you treat my friends bad, I'm not going to treat you good. And I get it. You know what I'm saying? So I had said something derogatory, was perceived to be derogatory by Judge Young, you know, and then my sentencing transcripts when I gave a speech, you know, and I was like, hey, you know, I'm a solid guy. You stand by that flag and you want people to tell on people, I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't see how you could advocate that behind the American flag. And I told you, I used the correlation of, like, you know, if we were surrounded in a foxhole and the enemy was all around us, we'd either die together or get out of there together, but we wouldn't give the country secrets. So I don't know how you're advocating that, you know? So it was just real. Listen, I'm going to let you, if you read my sentencing transcripts, right? I used to say that it was pornography for a prisoner, right? Because if you read it, you'd be like, yo, this dude's all that, you know? So, and it was a good speech. And listen, you know, people loved the speech and people, you know, rave about it. You know what I'm saying? But it's just the way I felt at the time. You know what I'm saying? So, and here I am, right? I got through my whole prison sentence.
Yeah.
And, you know, whatever. I just, like Frank Sinatra says, I did it my way. You know what I'm saying? There's some things that, you know, I wish I had done differently maybe. I don't know if I contradicted myself, but I did what I did. That's who I am. You know, I'm in a different phase of my life doing different things right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, listen, my life couldn't be better right now. it's just, I'm starting to crash in against that time thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I need extra innings or some overtime.
So okay. Could you imagine, like, if you're about to go to, you're facing 35
And
years
the
in
judge,
jail.
it was an open plea agreement. He could have gave me 10 life sentences if he wanted
Really?
to. Yeah.
Oh, dude, this dude's going in.
Yeah, because you know what?
It was
So
like, you know what? This guy
Yeah,
got balls.
slightly
Yeah.
impressed.
No,
Like-
but he didn't like it. His reaction afterwards was like, "You have done nothing but sully the names of the soldiers of this country. You have done nothing but serve your own needs."
Yeah,
He
yeah.
said, "You're gonna go to jail for 35 years, and you're gonna stay in maximum security for the
Yes.
length of your stay." Yeah, you went.
If that was now, that would be like something on Instagram or
Oh,
on
definitely.
TV.
Oh, definitely.
100%.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So now you go to maximum security. Which prison did you go to?
So I went to Leavenworth Penitentiary, the hot house.
Damn.
Yeah,
Okay, what was that like?
So what was that like? I'll tell you what it was like. So it's looks like a Gothic cathedral, right?
Uh-huh.
And they don't take you in the back in R&D. They make you walk up the front steps. So you're handcuffed and shackled walking into this behemoth, right?
Yeah.
You're like, because what they want you to do when you're walking up their front steps is say to yourself, what the F have I done to my life? It's exactly what,
It's like the military. They kind of want to break you.
That's the intended effect. And
Yeah.
ironically, there is a military prison right next door, Fort Leavenworth.
Okay,
But I
yep.
was in the federal penitentiary. So I walked up the stairs. I remember I didn't get out. I went to segregation first. They put everybody in segregation. You have to have something that's called a captain's review, where the actual captain of the institution sits you down and says, "You do realize this is Leavenworth Penitentiary, right? Have you cooperated in a federal investigation? Are you a fair of your life to get on this line? There are murders here daily. There are stabbings. This is the hothouse. Are you confident that you can stay out here on your own?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course. No problem at all with it." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then he said, "By the way," he goes, "do you know who Diamond Danny is?" So it's a Hell's Angel from New York City. Diamond Danny just passed away in a motorcycle accident. And he just got out after a long prison sentence, too. And I said, "Of course I know Diamond Danny." He goes, "Yeah, he's a pretty good guy." Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But he read you the riot act first. He goes,
Yeah.
"I don't know if you know what this is.
Yeah.
I know you're used to being in that county jail or wherever they held you, but this is Leavenworth Penitentiary." So when I finally do get out, I remember being in a holding cage, too. This is the craziest thing about Leavenworth. They try to torture you because they want to show you, like, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
So you're in prison, right? And I thought this was the craziest thing about being in prison was you're in prison. You know you're in prison, right? You get it. It's cops everywhere. You're living in the police station. They take you to these holding cages, right? About half the size of this room where, you wait to go see the captain.
Yeah.
They put you in handcuffs. Now, I'm handcuffed behind my back. I can't even put my hands behind my back. My shoulder kills so much, imagine. Thank God I'm not in jail no more. So you're in a holding cage. I was in a holding cage for 4 hours with my hands cuffed behind my back. And I'm
Jeez.
thinking, I'm in prison. Why my hands cuffed behind? But I ain't saying nothing. I'm just,
Yeah.
Captain's going to see you in a minute. All right. You know what I mean? So that was the craziest thing. But, they just try to, they try to show you like, hey, listen,
Yeah,
this is the
yeah.
real deal right now.
So what did you have a cellmate? Like, what's the cell
Okay,
situation?
I'll tell you how that went. So when I first go up, I finally do get out. When they got to say like, okay, you told us you're all right.
Yeah.
We've made a determination you're all right. You know what I'm saying? Number one is if you didn't cooperate, you don't have a sex case from before. I'm saying you're probably going to get on the line, right? And some people, they let on the line, but when you first walk out,
What's on the line?
on the line means to get into general population.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
If
I
they-
think
but-
everybody knows the lingo,
Yeah,
right?
If they don't put you in general population, what are you just
You go
stuck?
to
Like,
segregation. You go to protective custody.
and you just like it's
You
like
just rot.
just rot by yourself.
23 hours a day you rot until God knows you can cooperate on enough people. You can, they beat you down. I'm saying,
Yeah.
it's just an environment where listen, the way I look at it is when I was on the street running around, I treated everybody like a sucker. Not my friends, of course, but the people I was getting money from, I was assaulting, whatever the case may be, is you were a sucker.
Yeah.
Then when I went to prison, I became the sucker.
Right,
You know what I'm
right.
saying?
Okay.
So you have to kind of rise above that situation, do your thing. If you think you're a tough guy, go to prison, and then you really got to be one.
Right.
Mentally.
Yeah.
So once I was there, when I went on the line,
Yeah.
right? So that's what we say when I went to general population on the line. I run into a few dudes. Hey, what's up, man? Where you from? You know what I'm saying? I'm from Boston. I'm going to see. I already knew a couple guys that was at Leavenworth. So that's the thing that saved me my whole bid. Because everybody knew. They had a little write up about me in the USA Today. So my
Congratulations.
right? Hey, I made it to the big time. So, but I mean, people knew who I was, and especially guys from Boston that would get the Boston Herald. They've been following my case.
Yeah.
So in Leavenworth, listen, Charlestown, South Boston, there's always a big population of Boston guys, and Boston's always had a great reputation in the federal system. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's solid guys that stuck together. So I went to see my homeboys, and along the way, guys were like, yo, what's up? I was like, yo, what's up? Where you from? I'm from Boston. Oh, you good? So yeah, I'm going because people they would come out. Where you from? You from New York? Oh, really? You got your paperwork? Yeah, I got that show you didn't cooperate. You got your sentence and transcripts because guys would be like, well, listen, you got 2 weeks to get your paperwork. Make sure you get it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Now at that time, you could go to your case manager, sign a cop out, and then the mailroom would send you up all the stuff you needed. They don't do that no more. They outlawed it in prison. It's a shot. If you got any of that stuff, it's a disciplinary infraction. If you have anything that has to do with your case, that will tell if you're a rat or not.
So if it showed that you were a rat, that's not a good thing, right?
You would be in a lot of trouble. You'd get beat up by your people. That's why you wouldn't even come on the line. You knew that was happening. The administration will tell you.
Okay. All right. So they're kind of like trying to stop
listen,
from happening.
It's a preemptive move, right?
Right.
For them,
Okay.
Because they know they're going to have to go clean up the blood probably. You know? And listen, the guards don't want disturbances.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, they want to sit with their feet on the desk, hang out, do their 8 and go.
Right.
Most of them. Some of them, you always get, there's all kinds.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when I went on the line and when I went upstairs, I just, talked to my homeboys. They got me a cell where I could live with somebody. It was a 2-man cell.
Yeah.
Before I went upstairs, the guy was like, the counselor or the case manager. I was like, hey, where am I going to live when I get there? Because I've been in pretrial. I'm saying I know about cell arrangements, right? So it's real. At the penitentiary level, which is maximum security in the feds, it's racially divisive. Right? So when there's a fight, the yards separate whites and blacks, and usually the Spanish and all the islanders will stay with the whites and the blacks just stay with the blacks.
Yeah.
It's just, it sounds almost crazy and like racist thought to even say that type of stuff.
No, but it's like everything has its own little ecosystem, and that's the way it's set up.
It's just the way it is. I'm not making a judgment call.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
It's survival.
Through observation.
Right.
And I don't know if it's survival, what it is. I'm just I don't know the psychology that goes into it.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not going to give my opinion about the psychology. I'm just going to give you, the way that it is. I'm going to tell you the way that it is.
Yeah.
And then you can draw your own conclusions. You can make your own determinations. So what happens is the case manager said to me that, he goes, where are you from? I said, I'm from Boston. He goes, well, you going with a white person? And it's probably somebody from your neighborhood. So what the prison administrators had in mind when they were doing this was, we're going to keep these guys close together, right, with each other. So because there's disturbances in prison. Mm-hmm. So if there's a disturbance in prison and guys go to lock in and they're enemies, what's going to happen then? You know what I'm saying? Right. So they want, they just want a smooth running prison. They want the count to clear every night. They want no disturbances. And then when there is, there's consequences.
Yeah. So you went to a cell with a guy who you didn't know him, but
I didn't know who he was. He was from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But a couple of days later, me and my homeboys got together. We made arrangements. I went to live with a guy that was from Tennessee that used to go to work every day. And then when he would come, I would leave because that's what you want. So you're living with somebody in a bathroom, right? Think of it.
Yeah.
You live in a bathroom with somebody, right? So you want your privacy. You want to get your time in the cell. You want to write a letter. You want to, take go to the bathroom, whatever the case may be.
You can say take
right?
a shit.
Just think about it. Just think about everything you have to do.
So it's just like a bunk beds and a toilet.
Beds and a toilet and 2 lockers, maybe a chair here and a chair there. Maybe, that's it. Or a couple shelves maybe for a book or 2. Yeah. So what happens is if me and you live together in jail, I'm saying you go off the yard from 8 to 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
When you come back in at 10, you want me to go out from 10 to 12. And that's kind of how you want it.
Also, you could go whenever you want. Like, it isn't like everybody goes at the...
Yeah, so in those, when you get to a federal institution, you're out all day. So the doors open at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then they close again at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in between, there's a 4 o'clock count, which is a national count where all the numbers got to line up. It's from 4 to 4:30.
Yeah.
Everybody has to stand up. That's the biggest thing in prison, of course, is accountability.
Right.
Because if there's one number off,
Yeah.
there's a serious problem in the system. And you know what I'm saying? So you got to get that guy you're missing.
So when you go into the cell for the first time,
Yeah.
is it? See, I want the basics
Sure.
here. Like, what's the hierarchy of bunks? Is lower better, higher better, or how's that work?
I mean, it's a great
or whoever's there first is
That's
like,
a
this
great
is
question,
what I'm
and
picking.
usually whoever's there first is going to get the bottom bunk.
Okay.
So when I walked into the cell with somebody, I don't say, "Hey, I want that bottom bunk," and
Right.
we're going to fight over it. I'm saying it just like so. I'm sure people have been in that situation. I'm sure there's people that have been like put their stuff on the top bunk because they don't even
Yeah.
want to have a problem with the bottom bunk. But I wasn't like in that kind of category. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was a serious guy coming in. You know what I'm saying? And guys knew who I was. You know, a few people, at least my homeboys were like, "Oh, that guy, he's a good guy. He just come in. He
Yeah.
just got a 35-year sentence." Blah 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 blah. Everybody talks.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's a little community. So. When I first got to prison, I always liked the upper bunk because, you know, like when you have company over your cell, somebody comes in and be like, "Hey, can I sit down in your bed?" Everybody asks. And when are you going to say, "No, don't sit on my bed"? I'm saying, "Yeah, let's take a seat." But I liked the top because it was cleaner, I thought. I liked it was my own little world. I was up there. Like if my bunkie was up, I wasn't looking at his ass. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so I just liked the top bunk.
Yeah.
Then I had hip surgery and then I just got a lower bunk pass authorization for the rest of my bid. I had hip surgery when I went to Devon's.
Okay. So when you first meet your cellmate,
Yeah.
Like, do you have the conversation of like, what are you in for type of thing? How do you get to know each other?
Yeah, so first of all, if you got friends already, right, they're not going to put you in a cell with somebody that's no good, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? So that you kind of, everybody's vetted, so everybody knows who everybody is in the jail, right? So I kind of, we talk, we have a conversation, we have coffee in the morning, just think, Ramiro, listen, you could live with a supermodel, right?
Yeah.
The girl of your dreams. I always tell people this. Picture being locked in, like you're not, of course, but 23 hours a day. After 2 weeks, you want to kill each other, right? Imagine living with a guy. I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it gets to that point. You just, it's all up here. You know what I'm saying? You just got to, like I always say, you have to rise above that situation and you just got to keep moving. You got to know when to make a stand about things. Like, and then, when you just, if you fought every day, you'd never get out of the shoe. You'd be locked down 23 hours a day for your whole life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you got to pick and choose your battles. You know what I'm saying?
So what point did you start, because you said you got educated in jail. Is that like, did you right away start reading and getting into, learning? And you said you learned
so
math
that was
and all
like,
that
even,
stuff?
I started that in pre-trial the first day I walked in the door,
Okay.
And I
And
started.
they just give you access to whatever?
So
or?
what happens is, now, picture this.
Yeah.
Picture if you're a prison administrator. You got guys coming off the street that all they can really do is cause you trouble.
Right.
That's it. They don't know exactly what's going on. They don't know anything. So when you're in pre-trial, the first thing they do is, take a library run, get some books. Dudes in the unit, when you come in, they'll be like, "Here's a bag of if you know people, of course. You know what I'm saying? If you're not a person that's undesirable or that, cooperated or you don't know what he's at, like, his case is weird, I think. Look at him, he looks weird. People, listen, it's the most judgmental environment on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But your friends will give you like a bag of coffee, here's a book. You're going to be bored. Start reading a book. So you start reading, right? Just think about it now. I'm saying when I was a kid, when I went to prison, it wasn't really that crazy. We didn't really have technology. But picture somebody taking your phone.
Right.
And not having your phone for 3 hours. You'd be like, you'd be crazy, right?
Yeah.
You get a book, you start reading it, you're like, you start reading, you start getting into it because now you start getting into the mindset that, okay, I'm going to be here. Let's all these things that you thought were crazy when you come in, you look at people like all this, like it's toilet paper day. What? It's what? Like Monday's toilet paper day. And you're like, oh, okay. So they give 2 rolls of toilet paper to everybody, but it's ritualistic. Oh, Monday, got to go get my 2 rolls of toilet paper. That's how you kill a little bit of the day. You start knowing Wednesday's the store day. So on Monday night, you get your commissary sheet. You start filling it out.
Yeah.
Everybody's methodical. You'll see guys fill out 30 sheets for 100 items. And you're like, no, I gotta throw it away. I got to get another one. Doing all the addition. They got calculators, but they do it by hand just to take time. It's ritualistic. So these things that you see people doing that you're like, wow, this dude's twisted. You're like this. Afterwards, when the new guys come in, they go, wow, that dude's twisted.
Right,
like,
right.
To me, right?
Because you create like a new baseline of your existence almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Perfect way to put it.
Yeah. So you're reading, you're learning, because you went to a couple different prisons, right?
I was in, not including the pretrial places and the transit places, I was in 12 different federal institutions.
So why would you get transferred from one to another?
It's a good question, right? People say, oh, man, they do that. It's diesel therapy. Listen, sometimes I had assaulted people, so I had to be disciplinary transferred.
Okay.
Right? Because I couldn't be at the same prison with the person that got beat up.
Yeah.
Right? Or sometimes my points would drop. I would become lower in security, so I had to go from a medium to a low. So that was a good thing, right?
And how do you
like work your way down to security level?
Yeah.
So what happens is time is a big thing.
Yeah.
So time, as you get time without disciplinary infractions,
Right.
So say you get 5 years, like, okay, well, your points dropped 3 points because you've been shot free. Then sometimes your age, once you turn 35, your points go down 3 levels.
Just because?
Just because you just think, right? Me is a perfect example. When I'm a kid, I'm wild, right?
Right.
When I'm 35 years old, I'm into studying, doing my schoolwork.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense, that's just a natural kind of progression.
Right. Did they have classes and everything that you
Sure,
go
they
to?
had classes called adult continuing education classes. We call them ACE classes.
Yeah.
And you could be an instructor. Like, for instance, once I learned Spanish, I devised 3 curriculums for beginning Spanish, and I taught introductory level Spanish. So I devised 3 curriculums, and I graduated over like 200 people.
So you like have a what do they call it? A syllabus?
Curriculum. I have a curriculum.
No shit.
I have 3 of them. I made
Did you give
3
them
of them.
tests?
Yeah, absolutely. They had to pass the test. And I used to tell them, I used to say, listen, to my friends, they were like, yo, put me down for the class. I'm like, listen, if you ain't going to come and learn, right, just give me your name. I'll pass you. I'll get you the certificate. I don't care. I'll get you a whatever. But if you're going to come to the class, you're going to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
Or don't come to the class. If you want just the credit, I'll give you the certificate.
And if you get certificates and stuff, that gives you points, or that takes
what it
points
does is,
off,
right, it doesn't necessarily give you points, but it builds up your almost profile, right? That, okay, wow, this guy's completed 30 courses. So they take that into consideration. You know what I'm saying? And they have different incentives. Maybe you can get, whatever. There's different. Like maybe
it looks better to have 30 pages of I'm teaching, I'm educating myself, than 30 pages of I'm getting into fights.
Yes, 100%.
Right.
So, you start, they would say like frequency of disciplinary reports. That would be a thing.
Yeah.
If I only had 1 incident report, but I only been in jail 10 days, that's going to hurt me more than having 1 incident report and being in jail 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just a little rubric they have, kind of.
Can we rewind to before prison real quick, just because it's stuck in my brain for a second? Because I think it's important for people to understand the whole ethos side of why people kind of do what they do. And especially during that time when you're young and you're in that environment and stuff. Like, I always tell people, like, reference the movie, like, A Bronx Tale. Have you seen that?
Since you've been 100, I take part in it.
I was going to say, so I always tell people reference that because your environment has such an important part of who you are. You can have loving, amazing parents that give you everything, but sometimes just the crowd you're with, you think this is what I got to do, or you think this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you
100%.
fall down a path. So for you, do you kind of want to break that down, like where your mind was at that time? Were you like, I need to sell dope so that my dad doesn't have to work as much? Or were you trying to prove yourself, I'm a tough guy and I can do this, I can do that?
So it's a great question, right? And I always say for me, it was a perpetuation of who other people thought I was at that point. So I just thought I had to keep raising the level, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, wow, dude, you opened the car door and just stabbed that kid 4 times. I was like, yeah, you just smashed that dude with a shovel. Like, I kind of like fed off that. You know what I'm saying? So completely not to sell drugs to support my family. I sold drugs to just support a lavish lifestyle that I was living at the time, not working, had a nice car, had plenty of money, went here, went there. My mother and father worked their whole lives, and what it did anything for me. So it's the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just for me at that point in time, it was just to kind of feed the self-perpetuation of what other people thought I was.
And when you were in prison, that must have hit you hard. You were like, I'm giving so much power. I used to give so much power to other people on who they thought I was. And you were like, took you all that time. You probably discovered, who am I?
Yeah, it's a great summation of how I felt, because at that point in time, and really how I always felt about that, was I proved being a tough guy to everybody else but myself. Yeah. I still had that big void there, And when I started to learn, that's why I say, education gave me self-worth, because I never thought I could do it. But when I did do it, I talked about getting an A in a math subject. I think it was trigonometry or pre-calculus, that I was in my cell and I cried. I remember I was by myself, because I said, oh shit, I could do this, And at that point, I thought like, oh man, I wish I could go back and use this and do this. And, so, but again, I don't work on hypotheticals. All I ever did was just keep moving forward with this. Mm-hmm. What can I do with this? And what I did was I was able to get self-worth, educate myself further. And I, like I told these guys that you weren't here, was, I taught myself Spanish. That's my crowning achievement, in life. And that I did that, and I always say, but I have to compare that to the guy that speaks 5-6 languages and say, wow, that's something. So what I did was just scratching the surface, right? Not saying that I'm the smartest guy in the world, but I'm proud of myself that I did do that. You know what I mean? So, but that's what I have done. Every day I've done something in prison for my mind and for my body. And that's my philosophy going forward. When I say my philosophy now is to do something once a day that makes my mother proud. Mm-hmm. Because my mother's dead and I put her through a lot of hardship, and she was my biggest advocate. She would do anything for me. One day she bailed me out of jail and I was like, Ma, I can't believe. She goes, John, I would sell this house and everything in it for you to be home for a day. So that was my mother's position. Yeah. She didn't care, just that unconditional love, right? And I could see if she did that out of guilt. She didn't, because I had the best upbringing that anybody could ever have. And I told, I don't even if I told you just now that my speech in court was like, hey, I want to start with these people. My only regret for everybody in this courtroom is they didn't have them as parents.
Wow.
So if that answered your question.
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you apologize when you went to jail? Did you apologize to your parents?
So, you know what? It wasn't an apology, and my parents were always great. And you know what my mother said to me the day I said all that stuff in court?
What?
She said that, I don't know if this is going to make sense to you, but I'm really proud of you. That, we're always taught, in our neighborhoods is that, listen, when something happens, hey, it's happening. It's right on top of you. There's nothing you can do to change this. The way you handle yourself when something is on top of you, that defines who you are. Mm-hmm. So she was proud of me that, hey, you know what? That I gave them props. I told the courtroom that, hey, these people are the best people on planet Earth. I didn't do anything like to support them. They didn't put me out in the street. They didn't set this example for me. They've set the best example that anybody could ever set. And I'm the only idiot that went and did something completely different.
You took ownership.
Well, of course, and I'm not going to blame my parents for.
Right.
I would never blame my parents. They were listen, the greatest people on planet Earth.
Yeah, I always say there's always people who I call it the hot potato. It's like, I'm at this point in life because, and they will name everything under the sun.
No self accountability,
but nothing. Where I grew up, my parents, this, that, whatever, and I'm like, you see people that come from the biggest shit in life, and they make something out of themselves. And the opposite, somebody who it's like their parents were there, they loved them, they provided everything for them, but they just chose to go a different way.
Right.
So at the end of the day, listen, I don't know what age it is, but there's an age where you have to stop blaming.
Well, some people don't ever find that out.
Oh no, some people don't. Yeah. They absolutely don't. Like myself, it's funny because I grew up and I think one of the reasons that I didn't get in major trouble was because I grew up around a lot of troublemakers. A lot of my friends went to jail for drugs. A lot of them died. The typical story stuff you hear. But my parents also, they had me in a Catholic school that was near my house. So I would go to school and I would see like this group of kids living a certain life. It wasn't like I mean, it was in Everett, but still, it was like different. Like both the parents worked. They would get in trouble, but it would be like different kind of trouble from my other group of friends when I was out of school. So I would always just think to myself and be like, "Well, I wonder what would happen like if some of my group of friends over here were like in this environment and vice versa." Right. Because when you hear people talk, you start noticing that they're very confident in talking about certain things, but only with what they're familiar with. So I'd have my group of friends who were always in trouble and stuff, and they would talk about the world like they knew about everything, but only in this little block,
yes.
And the other side too. And I would always be like, I wonder what would happen if this friend of mine had a conversation with this friend of mine. Like so I also would like, I was a big instigator when I was younger, but I was also the guy that when I would learn from other people's mistakes. So like if I was hanging out with you, I'd hang out with you to a certain extent. Right. Like when I saw Johnny stab a dude in the car, I'd be like, all right, I'm not gonna do that. I'll hang with Johnny, except
we'll go for coffee in the morning. But after it gets dark, forget it.
I'll hang out with you on Fridays up until about 11. But that's what I did, and then and I have friends that I grew up with that in and out of jail all the time. A bunch of my friends got into like. I party with friends. They would party extra. I'm like, I'm not going to go. Like, I do weed. I would sample some pills. Right. But I never stuck anything in me and stuff. Yeah, I would stop at a certain point, and those friends that went extra, they died from drug overdoses and went to jail for that stuff.
And when you were saying earlier, the whole, like, people take the idea of, like, not cooperating and ratting. I think they really don't get the grandiose idea of it. Like, in your case, you had a group of people how do I put this into the right words? You had a group of people, basically, you knew you did the right thing for them. You were good. Your family's good. Like, you were just giving all those amazing examples earlier. I have a funny thing. My dad, he did the same. He told me a story once how he was a chef in the North End for years. And he moved there in the 90s. So, like, Mafia was pretty big there at the time. Right. And he told me this story once. He's like, Moose, like, you never want to get someone in trouble for no reason, like, yada, yada. And he told me this story. He barely knew any English at the time, and his boss was, like, really good to him. He used to cook all night. Then he would close the place, and he would clean it. And the boss wouldn't hire a cleaner. He would pay my dad to stay till, like, 3 a.m. to clean the place with his boy, because my dad had 5 kids at the time, whatever. Right. And he said there was this young kid in the North End that always lived there that was just, like, running amok and, like, hanging out with the wrong crowd and stuff. And he loved my dad, and he would come in and my dad would give him food. And he lied to my dad once. He was like, can I come here and hang out with a couple of my friends? He was like 22. And my dad's like, yeah, just, I don't want you out on the streets. Just, if you guys want to come and play cards here or whatever, like, while I'm cleaning, that's fine. So for months, the kid was selling drugs there without my dad knowing. Like, he would bring a friend.
Yeah.
They'd play cards and whatever would happen. Long story short, a huge fight broke out at like 4 a.m. at the restaurant. My dad was about to leave, a whole mess and everything. His boss came. He's like, what happened? Who was it? My dad's like, I have no idea. And I was like, did you lose your job? He's like, almost. I'm like, you had 5 kids. You just, like, why didn't you say anything? He's like, well, he was going through a tough time. I knew his parents. They didn't have money. He was, like, why am I going to make his life harder? I was like, and I stopped right there, and I'm like, that's when I figured that out. I'm like, you have, I don't know, it's a weird concept that I can't even put into words, but, like, my dad, God rest his soul, he was just the most, not many people would do that. Like, if I'm jeopardizing your money and your stuff and everything, you're going to, like, forgive someone so easily.
Especially if you're a law-abiding citizen, right?
Exactly.
You wouldn't expect that from somebody. I'm saying, and I use that example, if me and you had a dispute, right? We go to court and we handle it, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like a business dispute, right? So I'd never expect anybody. I was in this middle of the streets, right? I already made an oath to myself and to everybody else that, we don't cooperate with authorities, right? So I just took that, to heart. And I would never want anybody to look at my family negatively. I would never want anybody to look at my friends negatively. Yeah. I wouldn't want anybody to look at me like that, because I've always had such a sour taste in my mouth when I see it, when I experience it, you know what I'm saying? So I would, I just think that, for me, it was never an option. It would never, ever an option. But I mean, for people that are like, if my niece calls me and says somebody's trying to attack me, or like they're breaking into my, call the police. Yeah. Call the cops. That's what they're there for, right?
I'm
not a cop caller.
Yeah.
But for everybody else that's not in that life of, for me, I'm not in the life of crime anymore. I'm not in that life anymore. But would I ever call the cops? Probably not. I'm saying I'm not a cop caller. Yeah. I don't want to ever be thought of as a cop caller just because of how I was shaped, how people would look at you. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, if I've had a contractual dispute over something that, I have a contract with somebody, I have a few contracts right now, but if there was a contractual dispute, my lawyer said, well, you got to go to court, I guess I would go to court over it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but I wouldn't physically, like, hey, some guy on Route 93 just pulled, just try to cut me off. I'm just not
his license plate.
Yeah, it's just not my style, right?
Yeah.
It's just
that's
whatever.
why this entire convo, I'm like, we're talking about this, and I've been raised to ask questions. So the whole time I'm like, absorbing it.
But see, when you're in this type of forum, right? So, like I said, I got a little bit of a cult following. My Instagram page is growing. You know what I'm saying? So you're in these forums, right? This is what I've opened myself up for, right? So there's no bad question. So, and like I told, like the first kid that did a podcast with me and asked me questions, I'm like, don't be afraid to ask me anything. How I answer your question will determine, what kind of information you're going to get. So,
right.
You can ask anything you want. My life is an open book anyway.
Yeah.
I like the logistics of stuff. So when you went, I do. I'm like, what's your first day like? So
right.
Okay, so when
you're right.
But when you're switching prisons now, so now you're like saying goodbye to kind of your group of friends that you've known for a bunch of years.
Some of them are tough,
and then you have to start over.
Some of them are tough, man. Some of them are really saying goodbye to people and have an impact on your life is tough. And then sometimes you don't even know where you're going. And you don't even know when you're going, right? They just be like, hey, Bartolomeo, come to R&D. Click, click. Here's your, you usually have an indication, right? If you're on the line as opposed to getting transferred from segregation. So if you committed a disciplinary act, like you got into a fight and you're getting transferred from the hole, you kind of sometimes don't know. But on the line, they'll call you a couple days, pack your property out. So now you have an indication, wow, I'm leaving within the week.
Yeah.
Like maybe not know what day. But anyway, you go to another jail. And then as this process happens, so like my first time, when I went to my second jail from Leavenworth, I went to Petersburg.
And every time you went lower.
Depends. Sometimes I went higher.
Oh,
because sometimes I had, disciplinary infractions. Okay. Or sometimes I was just under investigation by the investigators of the prison, right? And I got found, they couldn't give me a shot. They didn't find a shot is a disciplinary infraction.
Right.
So, and they didn't give me, they didn't find me guilty of anything. They didn't even, give me any charges, but they put me in the next security level higher because it was their determination that I was involved in wrongdoing at the prison and they couldn't prove it, but they wanted me to go to a higher security.
Oh,
just because they said it.
That's
the investigators.
Crazy. So and
they were right most of the time.
So when you were leaving though, like what's that like when you're like saying goodbye to these guys? It's like you'll never see them again, probably.
Yeah, sometimes you will. I've kept a lot of contacts with people I knew in prison, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So now with the advent of social media, it's a lot easier to find people. So, but there's some people I'll never remember my whole life, and there's other people I'll never forget. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but now when you go to the next prison, like, hey, where'd you come from? Leavenworth. Oh, you know my homeboy Herbie? Oh, yeah, Herbie was in the same block as me. Boom.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Boom,
This dude was hanging out with Herbie. You got to be good. You know what I'm saying? Some people be like, here's what I would do when I get to like a certain place and my second or third place, or places like these minimum securities and lower securities.
Yeah.
I would just I remember I was in Fort Dix. It's like a low security zoo. Horrible place.
Yeah.
But everybody loved it. What I did was I got all my paperwork for my court proceedings. First thing I did, I left it on the table in a 12-man room, and I just went out to the yard. In other words, check my shit out. But everybody was like horrified. Nobody touched it because nobody wanted to show theirs. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's funny.
So, there's a lot of pedophiles there at those low securities because, it's just.
And when you find out someone's a pedophile, it's like, do they get their ass kicked like on a daily basis?
Some people get really harassed. I remember there was incidences in Fort Dix when they found out dudes were pedophiles.
Yeah.
And they would take, they would be out, they would take their mattresses and all that, throw them in the shower, put the shower on, and leave the shit running. You know what I'm saying? All dudes would be like, hey, Johnny, can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, yo, what's up, Bo? You go, hey, you know that dude Paul in your room, man? He's a pedophile, man. I'm like, yeah, he's a piece of shit, whatever. And he goes, we're going to rob him at 3 o'clock, so try not to be around, or if you're in there, just whatever. Well, yeah, whatever. Do your thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Ran into the room, mask. You know what I'm saying?
He's up there just reading. He's
no, listen. He's like, no. It's funny stuff too. So listen, I've seen some stuff happen to pedophiles that's hilarious. My friend, this kid Panama from Florida, he was the best, right? He would go out there with a pair of headphones on, no radio, right? And he'd walk the track and he'd see a pedophile and he'd be like, yo, my man. Hey, let me check that. I'm going to see if these headphones work. Let me see that radio. You're like, no, I can't. He goes, give me that radio and let me see. You just take their radio and just walk they'd be in there'd be this huge TV room.
Yeah.
There was some TV rooms where pedophiles weren't allowed. But you had to give them one TV room in Fort Dix. So they would sit at the very front of the TV like this. The TV's right here. So they'd be like this, looking at the TV like everybody's in the back comfortable. They'd be like this, trying to look at the TV.
Yeah.
And my friend Panama just might go up to them and be like, hey, what's up, man? I thought I told, give me that radio. You're on TV restriction, I told you. But he got locked up for it because they'd be out there with the book, right?
Yeah.
With all the mugshots of all the prisoners. That's the one that did it. You know what I mean? So, but it's just hilarious. Some of them guys.
What'd you like watching in prison? Was there something you were like, oh, I got to check this out?
So I was a big sports guy because sports kind of defines, the time in prison. NFL is the fastest, whatever it was before, 16, 17 weeks in prison. Fastest. That is the fastest time in prison. It just goes by. And you just mark off. You just kill time with NFL season. But I got into that Yellowstone at the end.
Oh,
I loved Yellowstone.
Love that show.
Oh, my God.
I love that.
Listen.
Makes me want to be a Puerto Rican cowboy.
Listen, ain't no question.
Yeah.
Listen, and Beth, best character on TV ever in life, Beth Dutton, right?
Yeah.
So, but there was other things really I got into was the Spanish novellas. Listen, I really did. I used to.
You could bond with my mother.
Yeah, because I used to hang out in the TV room, but I used to every night. 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock, Tierra de Reyes, or El Señor de los Cielos.
Oh, I have that gives me PTSD when I was little.
Yeah, you used to.
Because when you're little, everyone's poor. You only have one TV in the house. And my mom would bring me over my aunt's house, or if they all came over my parents' house, they put on Dos Mujeres, Un Camino, and I'm like, oh,
listen,
God.
But this was wrecked for me. This was I used to be and then at the end, when I sat there, I'd be like, yo, I'm the baddest dude on the planet. I understand everything. So that was different for me, right? It's all subjective interpretation, right?
Yeah.
For you, it was traumatic.
For me, it was a nightmare.
For me, it was
Johnny comes down and be like,
that ever happened.
Did she find out that he's cheating with her sister?
Yeah, I didn't even. I followed the storylines only because I could, right? And I used to just get in tune with one character that was kind of my age and find out his way of speaking and thinking, and I would kind of just try to mimic it. You know what I'm saying? So I learned from watching novellas.
Wait, so you got it how long ago?
Yeah, a year and a half ago, about last August.
Bro, he was in for Tom Brady's entire career. He saw
Love
it,
Tom
obviously,
Brady.
but isn't that
Love
crazy?
Tom. Love Tom. He made me a hero in jail.
That's
He made me a hero.
crazy. So, okay, now I know you were fighting the whole time you were in jail, to get out and stuff.
Yeah.
Or to shorten your sentence. But did you ever? I think I asked you this. You saw Shawshank Redemption, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever have think, how could I escape out of here? Do you ever look around and go if I were to escape, how would I do it? Yeah.
You would think, right? And this is what I said to myself was near impossible, right?
Yeah.
But it can be done.
Yeah.
Near impossible. I didn't even worry about that. I just went to the next part. What do I do when I get out? Where am I going? Am I putting the people I love in jeopardy?
Right.
Hey, come and meet me. So now you're an accessory and you're going to prison? Because I don't know anybody that stayed out of prison. Everybody gets caught.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And at that point, what happened was as time started progressing, right? You know, I used to tell people the story of when I was in the minimum security, right? Camp, I used to run down the hill, jump in a car, and go with the girl I was married to at the time to the hotel and hang out. You know what I'm saying? This was at the very end of my bill when I was in minimum security. You could do that. There's no fences.
Right.
You weren't really doing anything. And if they found out you left, there wouldn't be anything. You come back, they'll put you in the hold, and they'll transfer you to a place with fences where you can never get out.
Yeah.
But they used to say, how did you go back after you left? I'd be like, I got 23 years in. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I got like 8 left, maybe 10 left. I'm saying, how can I do anything now? If I had the opportunity when I first went, maybe that would be a different story. But nobody stays out. They're going to get you. You know what I'm saying? That's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah, it's true because what are you're going to go to something familiar because you've been in for so long. So now you could be like, okay, now I know exactly what to do when I'm out. So you have to go to something familiar. Like you said, you're going to get other people in trouble. And clearly you went in because you didn't want to get other people in trouble. So, like, you're not going to.
And clearly, I can't go to that bank account where I got the $10 million stash.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you had the resources, you had a plane, you had.
Right.
I mean, it's just.
It's glamorized. It's
yes.
wicked glamorized.
Listen, it sounds like a.
Yeah.
Look, what the hell? That's crazy. I would never. I love the people that be like, I would never. I'm finding a way out of it. You know what I'm saying? It's just people that don't understand.
You probably have more of the dudes like you've seen Shawshank, right?
Yeah, of course.
The old guy who couldn't handle it and ended up hanging him. Like you have probably more guys who are like, you know what? I'm just going to commit a crime, go back in. At least I have my schedule. I know what. You learn. It's like an ecosystem. Like I said,
1,000%.
Little ecosystem.
So what was that first day out like for you?
You know what? And I was telling these guys when I was here a few days ago. Listen, I'm the worst case study because when I got out, I forgot I was even in prison. When I went, my friends picked me up after 27 years, and I got in the fucking Escalade with them.
That's all right.
No,
I got in the Escalade with them, right? It was like I only did a 2-year bid.
Wow.
It felt like I never left. Like it was the craziest thing in the whole world. I told them the story about I had a furlough. After 21 and a half years, they gave me taxi money to go to the bus station and take a bus to my next jail because I was going to a minimum security where I could run down the mountain and get out. There's no fences.
It's the honor system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is you got to have like 2 years left. You got to have under a certain amount of points where you don't want to mess that up. You're in the greatest situation in prison. I used to go to these places and be like, this is prison? My friends, don't say that word here. This ain't a prison. It's a camp. You know what I'm saying? I go, what time they lock the doors? He goes, what you say? Don't use that word lock. They don't lock around here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but when I got out, I ran down I ran to the taxi. It was like I never was in prison. My friends told me I'd be traumatized. Everything's so fast. Everything's this.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Did you go right back to East Boston, or what'd you do?
No, I just took. Actually, what happened was I was in a prison in Connecticut, and I just took a ride to Pennsylvania.
Why in Pennsylvania?
Because that's where I was designated to, the next institution I had to go to. So it was a transfer furlough. Okay. I had to go from one destination to the next.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was going home. I didn't get a furlough to go home. I got something called a transfer furlough, where I went from one destination to the next, and I just reported to the next prison.
And but how about when you were out, like when you were on your way home? Like what was
today? Like, like 18 months ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just with friends that I've had my whole life. We shot the shit. It was just, Was everybody acting normal? Was everybody sobbing, happy to see you? Know what I mean? Listen, I've talked to these people my whole bid.
Yeah.
We've made arrangements. Hey, listen, 72 more days, buddy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So this process has went on, and every day we got closer and closer. Hey, what did you get me for sneakers, bro?
Yeah.
Don't send nothing in. Just bring them in the car. What you get me?
Yeah.
Now, like, while I'm looking at this, hey, I looked at a phone last night. Hey, I like them Air Maxes. You know what I'm saying? This whole process wasn't like 27 years ago, I talked to them last, and then I'm seeing them for the first time.
Okay,
they have been on visits with me.
Yeah.
They have come to see me. You know, so I think that's a misconception a lot of people have about prison is I wasn't under a rock. I was watching TV.
Yeah.
I was moving around. I was working out. I was doing things for my mind and my body. So
where'd you go to live?
I had to go to a halfway house. So I went to Huntington Avenue, right across the street from the YMCA in Huntington.
Yeah.
There's a federal halfway house. I think it's the only one that we had. So I lived there for 6 months. And then I was eligible for home confinement. They put a ankle monitor on me. And I told you, I lived with my friend who's a judge.
Yeah.
Leo Farmer. He's a state judge now.
Yeah.
He's in the state of Massachusetts at the district court level. Great guy, just a dear friend of mine. Been a friend of mine since we've been teenagers. And he allowed me to come to his house with him and his family.
That's when you know, like, you're a good person. Like, overall, like, you get out of jail and you have, like, a million people that want to help you out.
And you know what the thing is? Here's what I said to him. He was going through this process to become a judge at the time.
Yeah.
And you know what I told him? I said, Leo, you know what I would have did? I would have give you a handful of money and said, Johnny, I love you, but I can't have you here because I'm doing this right now. That's what I would have said to him.
Yeah.
But he said to me, I don't care, John. You're my friend. You're staying here.
It's so funny that you got out after 27 years and you didn't have like a culture shock because have you ever heard of reverse culture shock?
Yeah, where it's like nothing happened.
So my wife's friend in college, she studied abroad in I'm going to say Italy or whatever. So that's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months or whatever. She came back. She came back and she couldn't handle it. And I said, what could she not handle? And she said, well, she just couldn't handle that. She came back and, that everybody else, like, there was different music on the radio. Everybody else was kind of dressed a little different. And I go, she couldn't handle it. Everyone else went on with their fucking lives while she was in Italy. I go, to what point? She said that she kind of like had a little bit of a breakdown. And I'm like, she had a breakdown because she went to a different country for a couple of months.
For 4 months.
Yeah, had an experience on her own and came back and realized that everyone else's lives continue.
Listen, if I was on an island in Greece for 4 months, living my life, and I came home to all this mess, I'd be like, what? Ship me back.
I just think that we live in like these times where, listen, we consume the most natural resources in the world. This is the land of plenty. Everybody has everything. I'm saying nobody's shooting missiles at your house. You're not going hungry unless you're a very small segment of society. I think we self-engineer our own problems. And I think that, like I say, I don't work on hypotheticals, and I'm glad I am where I am. I've been through a lot of adversity, but I've never treated it as adversity. I've treated it as this is my situation. This is what I have to do. And I never thought I'd get out of prison because I had such a long prison sentence.
Yeah.
And I always give the people this example. Imagine doing 15 years in prison, then having 20 left. Imagine doing 25 years in prison and having 10 left. And seeing people come and go every day, and you'd be like, I'm never going to do this. It's never going to end. I've been there a million times saying, time flies. Fucking 10 years went by like, whoop, where did that 10 years go? I still got 25, doesn't matter. Time can fly, but it never ends for you. That was my dilemma in prison. But I am, you know what it is? I'm a cheapskate, right? I'm frugal.
Yeah.
So what happened was after those so many years I had invested, eating good, working out, educating myself, I never wanted to lose them. That was the investment. That would be like investing your first $25,000 and just blowing it in Vegas in a night. I couldn't do it. I had to just keep compiling, this way of living to say like, hey, maybe there'll be a day when I do get out. And then as it got closer and closer, when I said, wow, Trump's going to pass that First Step Act. Wait a minute, I might be eligible for the drug program. I never thought I was going to be eligible for either, but I was eligible for both. Then I started calling my friend on my cell phone when I was in Berlin camp, and I was like, listen, and he said, get rid of that phone. He knew what I was going to say. He goes, get rid of it, smash it in a million pieces. I'm never answering again. Don't call me no more on that because I could get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
So, I had like 2 years left, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then something happened, and I got credit for this and credit for that, and I was like, wow, I'm going to this drug program. I used to walk by the drug program sign at Lewisburg Penitentiary, right? I was in the camp, but it's Lewisburg Penitentiary.
Right.
But make no mistake, I was in the minimum security part of
Yeah.
it. I said Lewisburg Penitentiary before, but that's the building, that's the place. But I was at the minimum security part.
Yeah.
I used to walk by the sign, and I'd be like, man, 365 days, that don't be like 9 months. I get 9 months of this. Then I'd be in the program. But then what happened was you're in these programs and these minimum securities.
Yeah.
And if they find something that don't belong in the prison like this, they'd be like, we find one more of these and we're holding the program back for 3 months. And then there was so much. It's a minimum security. You can have somebody grab a hockey bag and leave it full of phones and drugs outside and say, hey, come and get this tomorrow morning. So that's how easy it is to get contraband.
Yeah.
And then they hold that over your head. I said, I wish I could do this drug program in Sing Sing right now when nobody can get in, just so there is no contraband because people used to get in trouble. I knew what I had. These people were coming in for 8 months, 10 months. They didn't care. There's a rollback for 3 months. Who cares?
Right.
I just did 26 straight years. I want to go home.
So it's like you're trying to make sure no one else gets in trouble.
So what happened was, right?
Crack the whip.
No, but here's what happened. Now, listen. I'm not the guy that tells you how to do your bit either in jail. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I say, hey, listen, Ramiro, I go to bed at 10 o'clock. You're noisy outside my cell. Please respect that I'm trying to sleep, and I'll respect in the morning time when you're trying to sleep. So what I said to these kids was, listen, you got to I'm going to let you know, because what happened is there was one officer there at Lewisburg. It was my first night there. I was outside hanging out with the cats. It's a whole nother story with the cats, but I was hanging, and he was like,
wait, actual cats?
Listen. So he said, now remind me, I'll tell you the cat story.
Okay.
And he said, listen, Bartolomeo. I go, hey, what's up? He goes, yeah, SIS, who's the investigators, just sent me a 3-page report on you why you shouldn't be here. And I go, it's bullshit. I said, I don't know. They designated me here. I'm friends with the doctor's husband. I work from the last joint, whatever. We ended up becoming, I created the report with the guy. He'd come up to me, talk to me. So he'd be like, hey, what's up? I was like, yeah, you want me to do your office? I'll clean your office. I become the head orderly there. And then he was like a sweetheart. Great guy. Shoot the shit with me every night. Bring cat food in for the cats. And I'd hang there and talk to him. I'm not giving him information. If I ever gave that guy information, he'd spit in my face because he knows me as somebody that, wow, who's this guy?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So I'm just hanging out there shooting the shit. And then he'd be like, but the drunk's coming down from the camp. This guy that used to be an officer, somebody did something to him in the visit. He's coming to shake down the unit. Okay. I'd run around. Yo, listen, put the phones away. They're coming up from the camp. Don't throw them out the window. You got 10 minutes. Do something with it. Go put it somewhere.
Yeah.
So I used to be running around taking care of these kids. They'd be on their phones. I'd be like, listen, get everything, put it away. They're coming up. You got 10 minutes. Don't be in a haste. Get it taken care of. Put it in your spot. Do your thing. Then everybody be there. They come up. You know what I'm saying? And everybody be like, yo, man, you saved my life. I had a line with the guy. He didn't want to work. You know what I'm saying? He didn't want this guy to come up, rip the house apart. And so you'd just be like, take one guy who'd been in jail for 25 years, knew a million people, knew wardens that started out as officers.
Yeah.
We had a rapport with each other. He'd be like, Bart. I'd be like, all right.
Yeah. You know
what
who
I mean?
you are? You like to read now, right?
I love it.
So there's a book. There's a guy.
But listen, I don't know if I'd ever read another book
in
in my
really?
life.
Okay.
Because I read way too many.
Well, there's a guy, I like his books. His name is Malcolm Gladwell. And one of his books, what's it called? I think it's called Blink. I forget, but he talks about connectors in the book. Like, he talks about Paul Revere, right? Paul Revere,
Okay.
the British are coming. So there was another dude. While Paul Revere's running in this direction,
Yeah,
the British
yeah,
are coming, there was another guy running down saying the same shit. Nobody
Yeah.
listened to that other guy because
Right.
nobody knew him.
Right.
Everyone knew Paul Revere. He was the connector. He knew the guy, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. That's what you were.
Great
So it's
point.
like everybody, like if somebody was saying that stuff who was maybe brand new there, they'd
Right.
be like, who the fuck are you, dude?
He's like, I'm
Dude.
Paul Easty, buddy.
Weirdo.
I'm Paul
Right?
East
Weirdo,
Boston.
right?
But if they're
Who's
like,
this
yo,
weirdo?
Yeah, they're like, yo, Bartolomeo
Johnny
just said this. You know, you got to
Yeah.
do it. So
Yeah.
you're the connector in that way.
Yeah, and I would try to sometimes get contraband back for them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
If to go in and tell the cop, don't write this guy a fucking shot, please. If you write him a shot, then the DTSs, who are the drug counselors, they're gonna know he got a shot. Then they're gonna pull us all up. I got fucking 60 days left.
Yeah.
Please, just let me graduate. Let me get out of here. I was stressed out.
And you could also be like, guys, you're gonna be at this point
You
one
can-
day.
listen,
Think about it.
You can't. You know,
Nah.
talk to your dog. So the cats. You want to hear about the
Okay,
cats?
let's hear about the cats.
Listen, I want to tell you one thing. I got a 420-month sentence. Okay?
Yep.
I made a soup. I called my parents, thanked them for coming, and I took a nap. Right? Mm-hmm. That's how I am. I took a nap after I got 35-year sentence. I went to Lewisburg. Now, there's been cats in different institutions because they've been there forever. Lewisburg's old, archaic, right? So there was cats there, feral cats. When I got there that day, there was 2 kittens born. All right? And this guy, what was his name? His name was Roman. He was a Puerto Rican dude from New York. He took care of the cats. Right. Okay? And now, when I get to this institution, the case manager, the first thing she says to me is, How you doing? I just want you to know, you're the only person we've ever had a meeting about before they arrived here. All right? Then I walk into the doctor's office, the psychologist of the whole drug program. She says, you know my name? I don't even know this person. I said, Dr. Ramirez. Does it look familiar to you? I said, I don't know, does it? And she goes, you worked for my husband at Berlin Camp. Oh, I said, yeah, A.W. Ramirez. Yeah, great guy. That's my husband. He said, you were very respectful, very hard worker. That goes a long way here. So she seen I was with the cats all the time, so I took care of the cats. There was 2 feral cats. Listen, dudes used to ask me, yo, how did you train them cats to walk the track with you? I said, how did I train them? I don't know anything about cats. I talk shit to them. I feed them. They're my friends. That's how I trained them. They go, we knew you were at the gym because the cats were sitting on the steps outside the gym. We knew you were in there. These cats, listen, they hung out with me, right? So now, the greatest time of my whole life on planet Earth, I'm getting a release date. I'm going home, right? What am I going to do with the cats?
Oh, yeah.
Look, I'm like, I'll keep them here. I'll send money for food. Now, listen, I fell in love with these bastards.
Did you give them names?
Yeah, of course I gave them names.
Well,
One of them's name was Tyson Blue,
yeah.
right? Because he would always bite his little brother's ears when they were fighting.
Yeah.
And his father's name was Tyson,
Okay.
right? And the other guy name was Gunner, because we had a little house, and his paws were always out, and they were white, and the rest of them was another color.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I said, it looks like a Gunner tower. We're going to call him Gunner. So Gunner and Tyson Blue. But I called him Killer. I called them all killers. I call everybody Killer.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Killer? Right? So look. So then I'm like, what am I going to do with these cats? I had made arrangements maybe to send them home with a friend of mine, but I'm going to a halfway house. I would say to you, Ramiro, take my cats. You'd be like, Johnny, whatever you want, I'll do it. But then I'm imposing on you. Then it's like, I told Johnny to take care of these cats. Oh my God, I got the dog, my kids, this cat, you know. So what happened is now it's like critical mass. I have to do something with these cats, right? So the lady that runs the store in Lewisburg, straight sweetheart, used to buy cat food, loved her. She was awesome, right? She said, there's a retired officer. They brought a retired officer in the camp. I had to come out to meet him because I had to give the approval for these cats to go. They got like, this is like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and meet yeah. So I walked out like, yeah, this is the way it should be, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm over here like, I'm an inmate. You know what I'm saying? So I said, hey, what's up? How you doing? I brought up a guy's name. I said, hey, you was up in the penitentiary for a long time. I knew you know a guy named Steve Kessler? Steve Kessler, he had a cat named Shithead. He was the only cat that was ever allowed in the penitentiary. He used to walk straight down the red top and nobody would bother him because they knew he was Kessler's cat. I was like music from heaven started to go off. Like, I'm like, oh my fucking God, this guy knows the history. This guy knows. This is a message from God. This is the guy these cats got to go with, right? Steve Kessler was one of the most dangerous inmates in federal custody ever. He was a Oregon State Penitentiary guy.
Yeah.
But he had killed a guard escaping from Rocky Butte Jail. Escaped, got out, was on the run. They said he was the most dangerous prisoner in Oregon, so they put him in the federal system, and that's how I met him. He became my partner. We did the whole gambling ticket together. He was my partner forever. He got in. Listen, we got like $1,000. We went up to a counselor's office, and he's like, just talk like the counselor's not there. Dad, we need $1,000 for the bank, blah, 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 whatever. He got the $1,000 back, sent my father $1,500 and said, Mr. B, thanks for the loan. Take the missus out for a bottle of wine. That $500 got Kessler about $30,000. My father got him the USA Today for the rest till he was dying, books, whatever he wanted. My father thought he was the best. Anyway, so this God knew about Kessler. I'm like, it's like an iconic figure in my prison life, you know?
Yeah.
So he says, I just want one of these cats. I'm like, can't do it. You got to take both of them. They've never been apart for 15 minutes, these two. Never. I go, let's go. They'd come out of the weeds in the back running. You know what I'm saying? Listen, these cats loved me. I'm still sick about them. So I told you I took that 35-year bid, took a nap.
Yeah.
These cats never seen the inside of a cage. Never. They're feral cats.
Yeah, yeah.
I had to get 2 cages and put them in the cages to get taken by this officer. They looked at me when I put them in these cages, right? They looked at me like, yeah, tough guy, solid guy, right? This how you're doing us? They looked at me like, listen, bro. I was like this. Yo, look, the lady came up. They come to get the cats. All I wished I did in my whole life, this one regret I have, is I should have just cried because I knew I was going to cry.
Yeah.
I was standing there like this. Yo, listen, I started to cry and hyperventilate. You know how when you're trying not to cry?
Yeah.
But I told you, I took this 35-year bid, but I couldn't stop crying. I had to give these fucking cats away. It was the worst fucking thing that ever happened to me. And I cried my eyes out. I had to have the lady from the store, not supposed to touch an inmate, saying, it's all right, Bartolomeo. It's okay. It's all right. She called me down the store. She goes, they went to the vet. They're on this big farm. They passed all their tests. They're doing great. And I was like, really? I was still fucking crying. Unbelievable, bro.
Oh, that's
These
hilarious.
two cats.
Yo.
And anybody that was in Lewisburg camp with me will tell you, yo, those cats. Listen, I used to buy them salmon out of the store. They called me up in a meeting saying, these cats are eating better than some of the inmates. They're eating the mackerel for $1.29. You're buying the $6 salmon for the. Come on, what are you, crazy?
You know what you got to do now is you got to find a way to incorporate the cats in your apparel somehow. Not like a big cat on the face, but something. Maybe like a claw or something.
Well, the two white.
The two white paws.
The two white paws.
Gunner,
This is for Gunner.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
I like it. I take all feedback.
Do you want to talk a bit about your apparel?
Yeah, so that's what I've done is, and I was telling these guys since I got out of prison, I told how the whole thing started was I always played with this thing like 2-7, STR8, 27 straight. I knew that was what I was going to do, for time when I started to know my date and stuff. And I was like, wow, that looks cool. That looks clever. Like, 2-7, STR with an 8, the number. And I was like, I like that. I like the way that looks. Like, I'm going to make that into something, But I never knew it was going to be anything until my brother said that, he was having this party for me. It was a fundraiser for me while I was in jail. And like I said, it had a little bit of a cult following here anyway from my neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. And he said I was going to have a party. The weather never materialized. It was bad. It was a bad winter. And I got shirts up there in the office. Why don't you get them, sign them, and sell them? And I always say, like, I'm going to spit my coffee out saying, who the hell's going to buy shirts with my signature on them? But, like, I signed them and I sold them, right? So that started the thing, I started putting my signature. Like, I got one of my shirts on right now, as a matter of fact. Nice. 27 straight apparel, 27 straight with the little signature. This is like something I did, real plain looking, because some of my friends don't like all that flash. I got friends that like the flash, friends that like the plain look. So, but what I did is I devised some designs and I started to incorporate my signature, and people started to buy this stuff, and there's still a demand. I'm still selling things today. I see people in my office. I got the website, which is on my Instagram page, and thank God, it's humbling. I'm grateful that people, there's a demand for it. So
and you're based out of Saugus, you said?
So my office is in Saugus, Massachusetts, and then anybody can go click the link and get right on the store if they wanted anything. Sure.
Nice. Bro, I could talk to you all day, but
I know. Listen, we can't because how long's it been?
Hour 40.
Not long enough to me.
Yeah, right.
Okay. But let me ask you a couple last random questions.
Absolutely.
Something that you wish you were better at.
Something that I wish I was better. I wish I had more patience.
Okay. If you could time travel to the past or the future, you can't alter anything. But you could witness an event or see someone over again. Which way are you going and why?
In the past, just to see how my mother and father met.
Okay. And is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
Is there anything that you didn't ask me that you should have? No.
No? Favorite quote?
Favorite quote is, I've often regretted my words, but never my silence.
Okay.
Ooh.
And when they make the movie, his life should be a movie. Yeah. And when they make it, the most tearful, the tearjerker part is going to be
the cats.
When the
cats, bro. Listen, it's always the cats.
It's always.
And I got two of them at home now, trying to recreate it.
Yeah, when you're auditioning people, it's like, all right, so the cats are going away now.
You'll be like, this is the moment.
Yeah, this is the moment.
Really?
Yeah.
Your mother died in prison. Your father died in prison. Yeah. This is the moment.
Channel the cats leaving.
Yeah, I know. My God.
Johnny, man, thank you, man. This is great.
Man, I love you. You're the best. It's been great. Talk to me.
By the way, Combat FC next Friday.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the ring announcer, and you're going to be making an appearance there.
I'll be there. I'll be hanging out.
Yeah, Joe
definitely.
Cav told me yesterday.
Yeah, it's great, right? Another thing we got in common. See, the world is small.
Bro, it's going to be good. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be great.
It's real fun. So I'll see you next Friday.
Awesome. Sounds good. My pleasure.
Thank you,
Moose,
man.
you're the best that ever did it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, guys.